Welcome back to Canadian Justice, where we are discussing a brand new book that I wrote with my colleague Josh Dehaas called Free Speech in Canada. It's available. You can sign up for advance notice of its release at the ccf.ca/free speech in Canada. And it will also let you know, if there's any book events in your area if you sign up there. Now, Josh, the book goes through one of the most controversial dilemmas about free speech that we have in Canada, and that is what is often referred to as hate speech, and the notion that Canada, the Canadian government, will put people in jail for their words. Why don't you tell me about hate speech and how the laws and courts in Canada thinks about the issue?
Yeah, hate speech is extremely controversial within the free speech world, and partly because it's really difficult to define what speech is hateful and what speech is not hateful, and the fact that you're going to be putting people potentially in jail for their speech suggests that it's something you really ought to be able to define clearly, and the courts have struggled to do that. What we do know is that the leading cases say that you can only be jailed, you can only go to jail for the most extreme manifestations of the emotion known as described by detestation and vilification, and only where the hate is sort of so extreme that it can lead to other harms beyond merely hurt feelings, merely being offended, things like discrimination or actual violence. And the case that really defines hate speech in Canada is one called Keekstra, which we get into a bit in the book. Keekstra was a really bad guy. He was basically a neo-Nazi, and he was teaching school in Alberta, where he's putting forward these ideas to school children. Really disgusting, and I don't think anybody would disagree with the fact that he was fired from that job. But the question was whether he should go to jail for some of the words that he used to describe Jewish people. And this got to the Supreme Court, and it was a bit of a nail biter decision. You had on one side the Chief Justice Dixon and three other judges say, look, the Holocaust and other incidents from the past show that when people are allowed to say hateful things, it can lead to more and more people, hating or singling out a group, and that can lead to really the most horrifying possible consequences. That argument it seems appealing somewhat, but then you realize that Nazi Germany itself, or pre-Nazi Germany itself, actually had hate speech laws, and they didn't stop Hitler. And in some ways, as we explain in the book, they seem to make him a bit of a martyr. The counter argument, which lost the dissent, was written by Justice Beverly McLaughlin, and she said, "Look, it's really hard to define what is hate speech. It can mean various different things to different people, and if we say the government can outlaw certain speech and people don't know where the line is, they're going to be afraid to say anything, basically. They're going to be afraid to participate in art, in science, and in the political policy debates that we need to have." One example she gave was, immigration, saying that we should be able to talk about immigration, but people are going to be now chilled from speaking about that because other people will view that as hateful. Christine, obviously this is something you deal a lot with too, hate speech, and you were actually invited recently to the Heritage Committee in Ottawa. I don't know if we have time, but if we do, I'd love to, for you to share that story
Oh my
just to show
gosh,
some of
you're
the
putting me on
problems
the
with this.
spot. That was a horrible experience. I was invited to Heritage Committee to talk about the right to freedom of expression and how important that is. I mean, I work in civil liberties. I work on free speech issues all the time. We have a new book coming out about this, but instead of asking me about any of that, the government member on the committee decided to ask what my views are on abortion, what my views are on trans surgeries for kids. He wanted, I mean, if you think that abortion is a freedom of expression issue, you do not understand why women get abortions. They're not getting abortions to make a political point. So, I mean, it's completely misguided series of questions I was asked. Frankly, I think it's because of the current government's polling numbers. They want to talk about abortion all the time, even though this is a non-issue. And of course, he asked me, with respect to hate speech, he asked me if it's okay to, he's in his words, he said, "Is it okay to say the N word?" And he was shocked and aghast when I said, "No, you should not use the N word, but you do not go to jail for saying it." And this is just a simple statement of the law. That word is used in a lot of music, and you don't go to jail for it. So I don't know what his government is suggesting. Very weird experience. We'll be right back.